In Kampala, it's a good morning. It is not cold. It's not hot. It is not raining. So the weather is so nice, and it's going to be this according to the weather. Witchcraft, someone called the weather witches. According to the weather witches, going to be maybe like this for the next few days in Kampala. We welcome you, our viewer, wherever you are watching us from Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. You may also be watching us from other platforms across the board, and we really value your time. My name is James Mtuta. I'm here with my fellow panelists who the Pan-Africans on this Good Friday. And we will definitely shortly be listening and hearing from each of them. Kampala, like I said, is so nice, and I guess wherever you are, together with the production team, we welcome you to this program of Pan-African Friday on this Friday. In the studio with me, I have my good sister, Rachel Takali. This time I'm producing her name rightly. But also at the same time, we have the man of the hour, the guy who disappeared to nowhere until he has been resurrected. I was hearing a background discussion here that he should have reported to police first. But finally, he's here. Ndugu Rugarama is with us today, and I think we'll be hearing a lot from him after he escaped from where he has been. We'll also be joined shortly by Ndugu, the man used to, Rachel used to call the man of chapters. Ndugu Tuko will be joining us shortly. So let's roll the week, how it has been and how we have enjoyed it with our lives and our families and our relatives and our friends. Rachel, how has been? What have you seen through the week in the lens of African continent?
Area.
Okay.
As you
come from Karamoja?
No, I do not, but there's some interesting happenings there.
Okay.
And as you know,
talking of Karamoja, I want to be there's this saying which is also true, that women in Karamoja, when you go showering, when you have to go to get a shower, actually, you have to get permission from the husband.
I'm not aware of the...
It's interesting, but I also like it. I want to learn how it happens.
That aside, as you know, there are final exams for senior fours.
Sure.
And there are two incidents that happened in Amudat on Monday when the exams began. And it involved two young girls who were ready to take their final exams, when they were captured by men who insist they must be married. You know, that custom of just grabbing people. As you go down the path, someone will jump on you and off. It's
you
very
you are married. Happily married.
No, not so. Forcefully. Forcefully, of course. So what happened, one of them was a senior 4 girl, a very bright girl, and she was doing well in the sciences. Her teachers had really good hopes that this girl would turn
into someone.
Yes, into someone. But then the parents were also complicit. They told the school authorities a lie, that her mother was not well. So she rushed home, where she was kidnapped and handed to a rich Kenyan man for marriage.
And off.
And off. A second one, there are incidents where school children are asked to collect firewood in the bushes. And so one of the girls had also gone to collect firewood. She was also kidnapped by suspected cattle rustlers. She remains unaccounted for.
This time it's not cattle rustlers, but girl rustlers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that practice of girl rustling is alive and well in Karamoja.
It's not one of our discussions today, but it is something which is really crucial, especially in the African context. True, this has been part of the African culture.
Ah, yours?
Yes. Not mine. Not mine too, but it is practiced, because I have also recently heard the people of the Banyarwanda community also doing it, and some of the other than Banyarwanda, I think there's another group in Western that this girl kidnapping is on, and I think it's a high time something is done. And the
I
discussion
think it also used to happen
we-
in Busia. I don't know if it still does, but it's a very backward practice. How and why should you force someone into marriage?
Yeah, it's something that needs to be discussed openly, and maybe solutions found. Because if it's not brought to the, we as a country still suffering with this genital mutilation, or people call it modification. The reason has been is that you can engage leaders.
Modification? Never heard of that.
Oh, well. We are joined by Nduk Otuko, and I think he will also be talking it as shortly. But really, these are some of the things. The other time the discussion was, if you want some of these hard practices to die, then you don't only involve the leaders, but let's have a way of involving the practitioners. And in Kapchorwa, I think they have tried to involve those who are involved in the circumcision itself, those who are the candidates, those who are victims, to be able to talk about it. But I think we shall have also time and talk about it now. So that was your week.
It was an occasion for meditation.
Exactly. Bwana Rugarama from the jungles.
Good morning to you all viewers, and I thank you so much for having kept this program very lively and participating all the time. I've been away for now close to, I think, 5 weeks.
Oh, a long time.
Yes.
Longer than the time the Prime Minister of UK spent in office.
My sincere apologies to you viewers. I was in DRC and Central African Republic for a UN project, which is still ongoing, and but next time it will not be as long as it has been this time around. The events of the week, I was mostly intrigued by the resignation of the new Prime Minister of Britain. And like I have always said, it gives the world the actual picture of what these so-called self-acclaimed democracies are all about. I do not view the resignation, the series of resignations of these prime ministers in Britain as a sign of democracy. It just reveals that they are vulnerable and hollow. At the same time, the vagaries that affect the political participants all over the world affect them as well. Of course, I'm not oblivious of the fact that we have started our examinations, the PLE, the UCE, and I believe very soon the USCE will also be commencing. And our levels of preparedness are not wanting. I think we've done very well. We've had the chairman of UNEB and the secretary come out to say the head teachers have been interviewed. You get the feel that we are headed somewhere in terms of preparedness as far as examinations are concerned. Also, of course, it is not lost on us that we have had the leadership in Washington invite the African leaders to go to America. I don't know if this is a culture now, but I want to believe that this is now informed largely by the events that are happening in Ukraine, the advances being made from either side. But mainly, I want to conclude my observation for this week by looking at the general political climate on the African continent and observing that what we had almost forgotten is unfortunately resurrecting in the coups that we are witnessing almost, you know, because this is Burkina Faso, I think. When you see what is happening in West Africa, largely speaking, in the words of Dr. Arcana, this is a real blueprint of what France wanted to happen in West Africa, especially in the 14 countries where France had the direct colonial rule, and still has her fangs firmly gripped on the political, social, and economic sphere of the so-called French West Africa.
Yeah, sure. And while you were away, we were also looking, the other time we were listening to this lady, Ambassador Arcana, when she was saying that as far as she's concerned, I think those countries are not going to have peace, and they're not going to be free until someone wakes up one morning to tell France to stop. And the Africans themselves should be able to do that, to do that cleanup. Otherwise, I think it's just going to be change over from one person to another, then the same problems will continue, like we shall see from the continuing programs. One, Otko.
Thank you very much, my brother James, for inviting me again to a very wonderful program on UBC. I want to begin by one of my items in the week was the news that the Rugarama was not lost or kidnapped. he was safe. So when I received the news, it was I began my week well.
In fact, at one point we had been told that
the
maybe
chairman of the Pan-African movement was safe. So I must say that was good news. The other thing that interesting about this week was the appointment of a dead general in DRC.
Exactly.
In DRC, it shows you how some leaders are completely out of touch with their countries, with their forces. Also, during this week, we saw the cancellation of the secret agreements of France by the new coup leader of Burkina Faso. And to me, I think that's a signal that maybe he could be moving to the right direction.
Or
because
he could be moving to the end of his time.
he could also be moving to the end of his term because they will come for him.
Exactly.
For cancelling such secret agreements. But also during the week, we saw a car-free day in Kigali.
Yeah.
And I think it is something worth benchmarking and finding out how they've been able to do it for some years now, where you don't have a car
on the road
in the city, and be able to appreciate and say we can move, and it's healthy for Uganda.
Yeah, sure.
But I think also when you move, my brother Rugarama, who has traveled, you will realize that there are some cities in the world where cars are not supposed to, I mean, it is purely pedestrian streets where people can be able, these are things that we can be able to copy. In the north part of Africa, we saw the issues starting to boil up in Chad, where people are starting to be uncomfortable and calling for protests and so on and so forth. So basically, that's how my week has been in Africa.
Talking of the Burkina Faso, the new president, the new leader, Ibrahim, someone who is now the new soldier come leader, who definitely took over from the earlier coup. And this is becoming very common now in the French former colonies. And like you were saying, this guy could be either moving into the right direction or could be moving towards the end of his regime. But what he's talking about, and I think we can hear him himself. I think we must have, we have a clip from the production team. If they're able to give us that clip to see what Ibrahim Traore is saying after taking over power from his earlier colleague, because I think it's about 9 months from the time the other coup occurred. And this person saying, no, I think we're not moving faster. First, they have a group of fighters in the north who they believe by now should have been cleared. And then also they have the real issues. Because you are having a fighting front line, but also you have to fight within the corruption in the government, the discontent, and of course, this after the coup, many people were arrested. So there's a lot happening in that country. But then we now have a new leader who comes in after another coup. I think let's hear what he's saying when he addressed government the first time he took over power.
Burkina Faso's junta chief and new self-proclaimed leader, Ibrahim Traore, met with cabinet officials on Sunday following the military coup. Former junta leader Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba also offered his resignation following talks with the new leader. We really need to change the pace. We need to change the pace. We need to go fast. The whole country is in a state of emergency, so everyone at this level must be able to move faster and abandon the unnecessary red tape. I can't even name one point where it is necessary to be fast. It is all the points. In Burkina, everything is urgent. From security to defense to health to social action to infrastructure, everything is urgent.
À l'infrastructure, tout est urgent.
A few hours before events unfolded last Friday, hundreds of people rallied in the capital Ouagadougou, seeking Damiba's departure, the end of France's military presence in the Sahel, and military cooperation with Russia. This is the second time in less than 1 year that Burkina Faso has a change in leadership.
And look at that. And the man saying, yes, everything's urgent. It's right. Everything's urgent. Nothing is a priority. Everything is a priority. But towards the end, we are hearing him seemingly saying that there must be a stop of the French administration and the French influence in this particular place. But also adds another problem, that now they need to seek a new relationship with Russia. So that's why I'm saying it is either helping him progress faster, or is going to tie him down, and then we shall have another coup in the next maybe 2 or 3 months.
There is an observation, Comrade Mtuta, if you permit me, and this is very critical. You see, majority of the coups on the African continent, if you like, have not been organically engineered.
Yes.
The truth of the matter is that what we are witnessing in Ouagadougou is not a new phenomenon. Maybe what is new about it is that we are looking at the international players this time rivaling and carving new spheres of influence. The dominance of the French dominance in West Africa is on the decline. When you look at the rate at which the so-called secret agreements, you can imagine such a thing as secret agreements. We all know what France did in the so-called French West Africa. Yeah. And there are these very disturbing secret agreements that majority of the French West Africa, if not all of them, save for the two which just jumped out, and we know what followed when the two countries jumped out.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Now this time around, there's a newfound love. And Russia, this is not the beginning, by the way. This is an extension of what Russia is trying to do. You know, Russia was secretly supporting, without necessarily gaining economically, the activities on the African continent.
Yeah.
Now this time around, because she has also been hurt by the people, the countries, the NATO alliance directly. So she's now coming to remind them that I can also hurt you in your historical colonial influences. And this is what is happening. I'm not a Jewish prophet, but I can tell you that many more African countries will extend visible attraction and influence and accept the friendship more openly coming from Russia. And this kind of friendship, like we are seeing now, the new military leadership in Burkina Faso, is going to create what one would call as a new political, socio-economic threat balance of power.
Yeah, and it is happening because Russia's presence in the West African part, and mainly, of course, we're talking about the former colonies, territories of France. Russia seems to be picking up. I think the two other countries which have including the soldiers of Russia on ground. So I think, like you are saying, we are going to see a new dimension in terms of political lining in these countries that were formerly French colonies, but also. And which is, of course, the other problem that I normally have with Russia is that other than trading with us in arms and kind of both hard and software, software, they seem not to have a lot of footing on the continent, which is also anyway good for us, because we like in the initial stages of the of Africa before independence, we were either seen looking west or looking east or something like that. But like one said, we have to look forward, not look east, not look west, but we need to look forward. But I think there is an increasingly presence of now Russia, and after maybe this episode, however it ends, there is going to be an increasing presence of Russia within an African continent, because most of the Africans seem now, and more so, and maybe it's basically one of the reasons as to why they have been summoned to Washington. They are lining with Russia, but also that comes in at the time when like Uganda, I think we are hosting the NAM next year. So and it's a lot of the membership within this particular organization is pro-Russia. By default. So I think the meeting in Washington partly is to look at how to get more friends on the African continent on that. So West Africa is also just an example of what is happening in Africa, but I think this is going to rally more. Now, there is also that information which we picked. I think it was the president of Uganda himself who said, I think he needs to call President Macron for a meeting about the issues in the Congo, so that because what is happening in West Africa, if not looked at, could also find a way of coming closer to our doorstep. So I think that meeting will also be very crucial. But now, Tuko, do you think, what do you think is likely to come out of the meeting if it happens between President Museveni and President Macron?
Thank you very much. President Yoweri Museveni has been very clear and consistent about the positioning and the future of Africa as a continent. And the purpose for which he ensured that the DRC joins the East African Federation or East African Community is to ensure stability first in the Great Lakes region. Congo has been a hub of different rebel groups that are disturbing not only Uganda but other countries,
Sure.
like Rwanda, like Sudan, like Central African Republic and others. So the importance of engaging the perpetrators of instability in Africa is critical for them to know that we are no longer the Africa that they used to think. We are looking forward. As you said, we are moving forward and ensure that we try to diplomatically strike a balance between the foreign interests and those that are brewing in Africa. Of course, we shouldn't expect much. The interests of the neocolonialists are always constant. The agenda is the same. They only change in terms of tactics and operations. But in terms of strategy, it's very clear on what their strategy is. And I think what our president will only do is to try and inform the enemy that we are aware, but this is what we want, and let the world know that we tried the diplomatic approach, and be able to be exonerated from being accused of not involving those foreign interests, what they call the stakeholders.
Yeah, sure.
In my view, what is critical for Africa is actually within Africa. We should be able to clearly come together and say what we want in Congo. And if we achieve that, then we can be able to have a better Congo and a better African country like Congo, but also a better Africa, because you'll have saved many countries from instabilities if you've been able to, if you are able to come up with a good strategy.
Sure.
In my view, the East Africa now, where Congo belongs, should invest much energy in dealing with issues of a strong standby force that they have started constructing. We should be able to make a contribution in terms of resources, financial, human resources, but also in terms of equipment, so that we can be able to deal with the Eastern Congo problem once and for all, and stage our forces in the DRC, and these UN and whatever should be asked to move out as soon as we have a force with the capability, so that we can be able to address our own issues. For a long time, we have known that the interest of UN and France has never been to stabilize Congo. They have a different agenda, because for as long as we have known, there has never been peace, and yet they are deployed in Eastern Congo. So it's very clear that they are not going to help us.
With
so
the biggest budget.
Actually, with the big, as the chairman says, with
And
the
contingent.
biggest budget. Yeah, so I think Africa should be able to, the African continent, or most especially East African community, where DRC now belongs, should look for resources internally, not foreign resources. We should be able to get this money from the taxpayers, invest in developing a capable force that can be able to deal with the Congo problem. And I think President Yoweri Museveni has been visionary in that direction.
Yeah, surely, because we have seen for the time the UN stepped in Congo, and they have definitely, I think, refused to leave for a number of reasons, including that they're keeping the peace, even when the peace is not there. But I think it's also an issue that the East African now leaders should consider on how to provide both security, but also to cater for the safety of the people in the east of the DRC, and also look at the more permanent solution to the problem in the DRC. I think UN, because UN has also now become part of the problem in the region. And in Ndugu Rugarama, I think you were in the Congo as one of your disappearances. And did you pick anything about the new developments, including the DRC joining the East African community, including the security situation in the east of the DRC and the new developments in the country?
Yeah, frankly speaking, there is a new spirit in Democratic Republic of Congo. Like there is a new spirit in Central African Republic, and that spirit is the spirit of let's reconstruct our two countries and let's do business. Now, in DRC, the country joining the East African community has been long overdue. When you look at the people integrated a long time ago. Actually, the Ugandans themselves just needed, it was just the icing on the cake, but the cake was already there. It could even be eaten without the icing. So, yes, the instability, the political instability, thanks to Tshisekedi and the leadership, his vision of calling upon the brothers, to come together and help out where they can, is a new revelation, because it has helped him to stabilize the country, but at the same time to expand the horizons across the board in terms of politics, in terms of economics. And the numbers now, particularly from Uganda, going to DRC to do business, when you look at the business in fuel, you look at, like there is a community, a Ugandan community, which is growing in all the major towns of DRC, doing this fabrication, here, which we don't take seriously. But when you look at the community, the Ugandan community, they are the ones almost at 100% who are doing fabrication of these tanks, these fuel tanks, And there are a number of petrol stations which are coming up in different towns of DRC. And the Ugandans are the ones who are doing the fabricating, and they are also trading in fuel. When you look at this mukene, this fish, you look at the trade between Uganda and the DRC in terms of fish, you will not believe it. It's amazing, Then, of course, we still have the issues to do with, because our project, for instance, is biodiversity protection, and we are looking at keeping the forests in Central African Republic and DRC. Of course, the program is much bigger, but you asked me about the DRC.
Sure.
Now, you realize that the forests have been attacked. For a very long time, they have been attacked, and the rate at which, especially with the entry of China, the forests are being cut down is also alarming. It's only that DRC has got very thick and large forests that we can probably talk about more than even 50 years. Even if we kept at this rate, it would take you more than 50 years to finish off the entire forest cover. Of course, we don't wait for that. There is a better method which the government of DRC and now Central African Republic has adopted with the United Nations to preserve, first of all, the forest cover, and generally speaking, the biodiversity, which is also part of business. It is part of business, but at the same time, because of such huge projects, there is also mounting pressure to make sure that the peace reigns, especially in DRC. And I'm glad that the East African community, one of our obligations is to make sure that there is peace in the member countries. But I thank Uganda in particular that when you look at the areas where Ugandan forces are, the amount of peace which has resulted into increased businesses is amazing.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe just to pick it from where Chairman Rugarama has put it, I think strategically for the sustainability of that peace for the future, the East African community should be able to help in building the capacity of the local army in the DRC, so that at a certain point T, it will be the Congolese keeping their peace.
Actually, they are doing it. The UPDF is helping in the training, like they did in Somalia.
Somalia.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I hope they pick faster than the Somalis. Ndugu Rugarama talked about the recent events in the UK also, of the turnover, the resignation of the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. And this has been, I think, in office for less than 2 months.
45 days.
Exactly.
44, thereabout.
Yeah. And we see her now also waving. So, and Bwana Rugarama was talking about if this the democratization or the absence of it, and what lessons then because if it were an African prime minister, I would have said we shall fight until the end, and they will be fighting to that end. Rachel, do you think this is a democratic development? Do you think it is a sign of a weaker system?
I think in this case, this points to the advantages and disadvantages of a parliamentary versus presidential style of a system, that is. In this particular case, we know that parliamentary democracies tend to see a fairly higher turnover of prime ministers than is the case for presidents. And the important differences also have their advantages and disadvantages. In the presidential system, except in, for example, America, tends to play into the hands of excessive concentration of power.
What are you fearing to say?
No, I'm trying to find the right words. I think it plays.
But even in the parliamentary systems, we have seen some countries that have been relatively stable and taking longer in terms of office tenureship. We have seen India.
They are there. But in most cases, the presidential system, as opposed to the parliamentary one, tends to give a lot of space to excessive concentration of power into a few hands, whether that is the system, whether that is one human being. The parliamentary, on the other side, it may not be a better arrangement, but it tends to not to allow excessive control by one person or one group by its very nature. So what we are saying is that I think the parliamentary, at least for Western democracies, tends, I think, to allow for also a perfection of a stable bureaucracy. I think for me that is the most important advantage of the parliamentary style that is common in Western states plus Japan and Israel.
Yes.
The presidential, especially the way it's practiced in Africa, tends to invest heavily in a weak bureaucracy for the simple reason that it has a special interest in concentrating all the powers in the hand of a president or his party or both. The parliamentary style, by its very nature, does not lean excessively on a prime minister, because the whims of the parliamentarians are the ones that determine how long someone stays there, as opposed to a presidential that generally sees the full cycle of an electoral beat, if you will. I'm not aware of a presidential system where it's easy to, for example, impeach a president.
South Africa.
But it's not easy either. It's not easy. Whereas the parliamentary style of the Western states, it's fairly easy to remove a prime minister.
Sure.
And in this particular case, the reason they always don't want to talk about, in this case they're talking about Truss, does not have an economic vision, some I think even think she's not stable, as today she says one thing and tomorrow she's another person. The other day she's passing it off to the finance minister as if she wasn't in the know. But the real reason why there is a turnover in parliamentary systems is once they feel you will not deliver the next victory, you have to go, particularly in Britain.
Sure. Because we now see this play out from the last, I don't know how many, from Cameroon, then it came May, then it came Bojo, then it comes...
There have been 7 in the last 20 years.
So then you see this last 5 or 6 years, but also they could also be suffering from the abortion that they did with the Brexit, that the pains that we may be seeing now. But that notwithstanding, building a stronger system, or is as a result of a generally weak system, political system?
The truth of the matter is that when you look critically at majority of the Western Europe democracies, they have been largely pretentious. And it does not take a magician to realize, for instance, that the longer and the higher that democracies like Britain keep climbing up, they expose themselves to the eye of the public that actually they are naked. My opinion, and I largely share it with all the positive observers, is that the so-called democracy in Britain and like in the majority of Western Europe and America, had it not been for the wealth which they grabbed and they built their economies, and then they built systems to capture the former colonies and put them in a mix where they will continuously siphon the resources, they would not be where they are now. And because I want to assure you and assure the public, and because the colonies are now getting new love from other sponsors like China, Russia, you know, there is a way these former colonies, colonizers, are getting shocks, and these shocks are being seen in instabilities in the so-called quote unquote the high top democracy. They talk about finance and the relations, international relations, by all the various, especially recent prime ministers in Britain, is because they cannot keep a strong hold like they used to of their former colonies. There is now, there are now powers like China, Russia, and etc., who are taking a reasonably larger share of what used to be an exclusive possession of the former colonizer. Now, I also want to believe that when you look, especially like Britain, not that Macron is safe, because I was witnessing the recent events where the French were protesting. I'm even not sure that they have stopped protesting. I don't know if part of the conversation that our president is going to have with Macron will also be to give him comfort that hold on, it will be well with you. But the truth of the matter is that the NATO presence in Ukraine against Putin, Russia, is also not doing majority of the Western Europe democracies well. It has got negative ripples, and we see them in the increasing instabilities like we're seeing. Maybe just to also end by saying that we have got the bigger brother America, who this time is no longer calling the shots the way she used to. And we have also seen that the leadership of the current leadership in America is not safe. I'm not sure that they're actually going to, the president is going to gain the second term. I'm not sure about that. Let us see how it plays out.
Yeah, but also there could be the other argument that maybe the issue why there is a high turnover, especially of prime ministers in the United Kingdom, is like Rachel put it, is maybe because the systems are strong. Because there's one thing, especially in the parliamentary system, that one you did also did mention of having stronger systems that can support the democratic advancement. Well, it is also the domineering is there that the Conservatives have been now in Parliament, have held the Parliament for a long time, and the government. Even with this turnover of prime ministers. But you could also say that because the systems are working, like we have seen also in America, of course, I remember when President Trump was there, you could also think that he was copying a few things from Africa to be able to manage a complex system like America. But and Boris also tried it at some point, that you could bulldoze. If it were in Africa, you would have heard that, you know, the Conservatives are not democratic, because the other time when they were voting on this last vote in Parliament, which turned out to be chaotic, the members were complaining that some of them were being bundled up by force to go and vote, and they were threatened with the sanctions if they don't vote with the government. Now, if that happened in Kampala or Nairobi or Johannesburg, you would see the EU people to be free to decide. If it were here, they would be so free, elsewhere no one will make a noise. But I'm also saying that maybe these strong systems. Now, the problem is that when you build strong systems, then you are making the leadership more answerable, more vulnerable. Because now, like in the UK, the Conservatives, of course, with their allies now, the other Democrats, are saying that if we don't deliver on what we have promised, the next election we are going to lose, because the electorate is aware and informed. Now, that's part of having an informed electorate, but also having a sensitive leadership, that we cannot hang on a leader who is not going to help us gain the victory in the next election. Now, that one being in Europe, I think is okay, and I have no problem with that. The problem I have is that, can we also, from their mistakes, learn on how we can build stronger systems, that we can allow systems work? Because now, one of the problems that Boris Johnson had was that the system could not allow him get away with what he was doing, especially when it came to the parties that during the lockdowns, while others were locked down, for him, he was with his friends who were partying. And police had to call him to order, to explain, to make statements. A sitting prime minister in Africa, that one will not happen. This morning I was hearing the President Ruto was having problems with the police because they were, I think, arresting Malala over the assault during campaigns, and the president is very bitter, said how could police do that? So if we don't allow systems to work, we also cripple our own advancement when it comes to political, to democratic advancement. So, and like you did say, maybe the problem with, and most of the African continent countries running presidential systems, because the powers are more concentrated in the presidency and maybe the cabinet. So maybe that also puts us on the wrong side. Now, you also find that most of the African countries are coming from kingdoms, and these kingdoms were not used to sharing of power, because there was the one king and the powerful king, and the rest were subjects. So maybe this copying from here and copying from here, trying to put up a system that can work for us, is where also get problems. But maybe we also need to sit down and define what do we need. If it is a parliamentary system, for example, we have seen South Africa, it has a presidential system, but maybe the presidential system in South Africa is not the other presidential systems that we have across the continent. So I think there's also a discussion which is needed about what system can be good for the African continent. I think when we come back from the break, we are going to look at some of the systems, but also going to concentrate much on what happens in the northern part of Africa when it comes to integration with the rest of Africa. Don't go away. We shall be back shortly after the break. Thank you for being with us.
It's Freaky Friday from Airtel. Buy or gift. Buy or give.
Get freaky too! Dial *149*10# to load a Freaky Friday bundle for you to enjoy the best offers on voice and data.
To buy a bundle for friends and family, dial *149*10*5#. Freaky Friday with Airtel. Buy or gift a bundle today. Dial *149*10# to get started. Airtel, the smartphone network.
The Ministry of Health informs the public that there are confirmed cases of Ebola in Uganda. We, however, urge the public not to panic as the situation is being managed. The Ministry of Health further reminds the public to be on the lookout for any persons who may show signs and symptoms of Ebola. These include high body temperature, abdominal pains, diarrhea, vomiting, bleeding from the body openings such as the nose, eyes, and mouth. Please inform the nearest health worker immediately if you see anyone with these signs and symptoms. To prevent Ebola from spreading further, please take the following preventive measures: regular washing of hands with water and soap, avoid handshaking and hugging, avoiding any contact with any suspected Ebola patients. Any person who dies suddenly should not be buried but reported to the nearest health worker or LC1 immediately. For further information, please call the Ministry of Health toll-free number on 0800-100-066 or send a free SMS to your report on 8500. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and World Health Organization.
One-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwao.
A weekly face-to-face conversation focusing on accountability, inspiration, information, and sensitization of the public from the various sources such as inspirational profiles.
Having disability is not inability.
Professional guidance.
There is no special antiretroviral therapy that is given specifically for discordant couples.
And of course, politics.
Don't you see anywhere that you would give a credit in the fight against COVID?
My role as the owner of the country is not to, be preoccupied by giving credit to my servant.
We have said that if we are to talk to General Museveni, there must be certain conditions in place.
Is it true that you paid 5 million shillings to MPs that voted for Anita Monga and Tayebo?
That is laughable. Why would we pay when we have nominated them as SEC?
The Conservative Party has been represented in Uganda's parliament for 10 years. We only by one MP, you yourself and my daughter, Susan.
Every Friday 9 p.m., it's One-on-One with Michael Jordan Lukomwa on UBC TV, inspiring Uganda.
Yeah, welcome back, viewer, from where you are watching us, and we are on the Pan-African Friday today, looking at issues that concern us as people of the African continent, things that are of interest to the people of this continent, and how we can maneuver or circumvent most of these issues for our development and the development of this continent. So the issue of systems as opposed to individuals is becoming an issue here. Do we need to develop stronger systems, or do we need to bring up strong men and women to be able to lead Africa into the next stage? Let me bring you now views from Ndug Otuko.
Thank you very much. Maybe before I answer that question, do we build systems or strongmen? Let me first make a few comments about what has happened in UK. And I think Truss has broken a record, a world record. She has performed better than Lule in terms of number of days she has been in power.
Yeah.
I think she's been there for 48 days. Lule was there for 60-something days. And I think Lule must be in peace now, because somebody has taken over. He's not the only one who has taken over. Also, it's quite interesting. I saw a comment from one of the parliamentarians in the UK saying that Truss has broken the world record because she presided over the death of the Queen. She also presided over the death of the pound and the death of the Conservative Party, and and he said it painfully. Whether systems or strong individuals, if you looked at all of these strong economies, China, UK, and even America, you realize that most of them began with strong individuals. It was the strong individuals that later on built the systems that are running them. Without the strong, we all know how America became America. The South was against unification. And it took, I think it was one of the most worst civil wars in that country that led to the highest number of deaths, because there was a high-handed gentleman who knew where the country needed to go, and he decided to directly use force for those that were not agreeing with the northern part of the country. And today we are all celebrating the United States of America, but if you check the background, the basis for which it came about, it's about strong men. We all know that the evolution of a country into a system is not a simple journey. It takes men with a vision to be able to drive a country to that direction. The parliamentary system as it is now in the US or any system in the West.
In fact, when Uganda, someone was suggesting,
yes.
I hope that debate is still on.
Yes, there is a group in a party that I belong to. There is a faction that is saying that we should go for a referendum and abolish presidential system and bring about parliamentary system. We must look at the quality of the individuals that are our leaders. Today in Africa, I do not think we are at that stage of adopting such a system where individuals, a few individuals can decide who the head of state is. However, this can also be debated because the debate should be, my grandmother who has never gone to school, does she know the value of her vote to be able to determine who becomes the president in this country? Does she know the direction the country should go? If we say a presidential system, do the peasants, because we are largely a peasant continent, do the peasants have the ability to make that correct judgment of the quality of leaders, not necessarily only presidential, but at any level? I think it's a debate for another day. My view is that we may have, as Africa, have to interrogate what system we can be able to use, not just copy and paste from the West. Because how about if we looked at the system Gaddafi was using? A council of something, from the village level. You have a few individuals who have understood where the country is going. It's a form of a college system where a few members in a certain sub-county become the voters for a president, not necessarily the MPs, so that you have all participation at various levels, but a certain quality of individuals deciding who the leader will be. But that is also something to be debated on whether the parliamentarians, revolutionary committee movement. The other aspect is that with the nature of the quality of MPs that we have in Africa, will they be able to determine, use their conscience, not their pockets, to decide who will be the leader? We have seen instabilities, for example, how a very good leader in Pakistan was removed by just bribing some MPs, and there was a censure of a very good leader that was very progressive, but because he was not agreeing with the West,
they even instigated
civil disobedience because and it is easier to get out a leader by the West in a parliamentary system than a presidential system, because the presidential system, we are talking about adult suffrage, the mass participation of individuals. So I think the question of whether systems or strong individuals, I think Africa for now requires strong individuals who can be able to assert themselves and give the direction to the continent. Then at a later stage we can talk about systems.
The problem is if the strong person, the strong leader, is not the progressive leader. Of course, that's also
that's where the problem also comes from.
Yeah. Because in a system like now we have seen the UK, if they were to go for a general election like on adult suffrage, and they are with all this turnover, then it would have been damn expensive for that country. Maybe then that would have worked. But again, when you look at, if they had a stronger woman or man who would stay on even with this turbulence, they still be suffering with this person, even when the other systems are dying out. The economy is doing badly. The other areas, like you did mention, are doing badly. But because the strong person is at the helm, you may not have the safety valve to get rid of such a person. But so the stronger system vis-a-vis the stronger person and the stronger systems, in which case then Have we seen systems that have progressed even with weaker persons?
Maybe
Richard.
Ndugu Mututa, just a small one here, is that you're posing a question similar to asking whether it is important to have a gun as opposed to bullets. But we know the two really move together. Okay, even for the sake of the argument, let's just give the example of the United Republic of Tanzania. We all know that, relatively speaking, the Tanzanian political system, the Chama cha Mapinduzi, has been stable and progressive.
That's a strong party.
Yes, and it has always provided leaders forming governments. For a very long time, away from Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, like the founding father, all the way down to the late Dr. Pombe Magufuli, we've had the proper system, but at the same time, strong leaders. But let's just point out a man like the late Dr. Pombe Magufuli. Certainly, he was a strong man in a strong system, and you saw the deliverables. Now, I do not want to go into what we are witnessing now, because that would, me at my level now, that would be very tragic. I don't want to go there. But we can see that what used to be during the time of Dr. Pombe Magufuli, the kind of relations he built, the kind of internal policies he fostered, the international image he cut, the deals he made for his country is not the same thing that is happening now. So, strong man, yes. Strong systems, yes. But at some point, we actually need a strong man. In majority of the even in a weak system, fosters strong and better policies for the country. But I would prefer the two to happen.
Yeah, because there's also the other belief that sometimes stronger men fear stronger systems, and sometimes stronger men kill stronger systems, or stronger systems can also kill stronger men.
The unfortunate part is, what are the stronger systems that we are talking about? And I think that's what Ndugu Atuko was trying to tell us here, that we justify ourselves against systems which are not ours. We need homebred systems. I have not refused it. Let's have the systems, even if we said we are borrowing systems, Western or whatever you want to call them, but we can domesticate them. Let them fit our situation.
Rachel?
I think, first of all, even before I return to what you asked, it's, in all fairness, the parliamentary system has also had individuals who have stayed longer at the helm. But it boils down in most cases to the sheer skill of this person to balance the equation.
Yeah, you are talking about the Italian Berlusconi.
Well, Berlusconi, by the way, wasn't there that long. Only that he went and returned and so on.
Yeah.
But most notably in recent times, we have Netanyahu.
Yes.
Netanyahu was there 15 years. Then we have Angela Merkel of Germany.
Yeah.
She was also there 15 years. Then comparably, not so very recently, Margaret Thatcher was there 11 years. And these are people who did well in fairly volatile offices. That particular office is fairly volatile. But because they had, we have to agree that the skills of political actors vary. Whether that person is in the parliamentary system, whether they are in the presidential system. But then in both systems, in most cases, like we said, that in the presidential system, it lends itself more readily to strong arm tactics, because it's difficult to overturn a presidency. And therefore, the will of the individual or the system has a tendency to run roughshod over whatever it is that is pertaining. Of course, there are exceptions. But that tendency takes away from the fact that it is also more stable. And the other one, because the systems are generally, and the systems we're talking about, the bureaucracy really. The bureaucracy is so strong that the country generally looks at these prime ministers as comedians in some cases. But everything goes on as it should.
To the extent that the more or less become like you could say ceremonial.
Well, you play your things, but everything continues. The case of Italy. Italy is I don't know whether to call it a tragic case. Italy has had 70 prime ministers since the end of World War II. But Italy is one of the biggest economies until today. If it was us, because of course our systems are not as robust, because of course we have a shorter history of delving in this kind of politics. But there is no country on this continent that could have survived that. There are other countries. There was a time when Israel was similarly unstable. Not to that extent, of course. But they have remained very robust from level to level. Whether it is a man in that office, whether it is a woman, whether he's unstable, your parliamentarians agree, like he was saying, the Libyan system, where you have this group of people who actually are good for the state. If this man or woman should falter, they throw you out. Let's try another. But as I said, because they understand, and that is the tragedy of the present African super state. Of course, it doesn't exist in reality, but in theory. I think the tragedy is that we have had a shortage of men and women who are investing in the solid, a robust foundation that can handle 200 stories of the African state. We have tended to interest ourselves in short-term to medium-term gains.
Because that has been the election.
Definitely. That has been in direct proportion to the directly, I think inverse proportion they call it,
yes,
to the stability of the state, unfortunately. So it is either that we invest long-term in systems that will sustain the heaviness of the African superstate, or we do. It is so bad that in many cases, if I'm the president today, I'll invest in unraveling the gains of whoever was before me. This is true in many cases. But that speaks of people who don't understand that we have to build one thing on top of the other. It is only systems that can do that. In other words, when you have bureaucrats, and of course we talk about institutional memory, we have people who understand, and there is a history, and there is a body of evidence, that under when Ndugu Mututa was at the helm, he did this, and he did that, and he did the other, and it was good for the country. But under Rugarama, these three elements were also good. And we keep moving those from Chisanja to Chisanja, regardless of whether it is Mututa, or whether it is Takali, whether it is Otuke. We keep building. But the tragedy of the presidential system, as we practice it in most African cases, is that it lends itself to unraveling every gain.
Okay, and whoever comes in with this group.
When I come in today, I'll claim for you, you had nothing to offer me. So I'll spend the first 10 years unraveling your investment. Then when I come, I'll also unravel his. So that thing cannot allow us to move forward. Whether you call it presidential, parliamentary, because there are other systems. For example, there is Ethiopia. They say there's a parliamentary system there because they have an executive prime minister. But in reality, they act like a presidential system. But what that does, you have a prime minister now, the previous one, you start again unraveling. Sure. Whereas what these people have that we can emulate is that for them, they keep building on what was good.
Yeah, because then you come back to the systems. Because if we have built stronger systems, not actually only systems, but stronger institutions.
Yes.
The stronger institutions will be able to guide the progress of
that progress.
Country, yes. But the problem is that if we don't have stronger institutions, then when I come in government, I'm coming with my own people who
and to justify myself,
yes,
me.
Then the new people may not exactly know what we have been doing or what the government needs to do. But I think it comes back to what Ndugu Rugarama also raised, the issue of who determines who the next leader or the leader should be. When it comes to voting, adult suffrage or electoral colleges, do we, as we vote, are we voting for the stronger person, or are we voting for the programs, or are we voting for the systems? So that is also key. But I think it also needs to be, to look at the debate that is ongoing. Sure, like Bwana Otuko said, can we have a few people who are focused, taking decisions on the future of the country, or can we, because we want a person who is responsible to everyone in this country, involve everyone in this voting, so that we have a person who is going to be at the helm of our administration? I think we'll have time and we'll look at these discussions, because I think we cannot finish that today. We'll look at the advantages and the disadvantages of having the adult suffrage to elect at every part of every level of the election, or can we listen to people who are saying, look, maybe we need a few people to sit down and take, because I remember before we went for this adult suffrage, and maybe sometimes maybe we don't need to change the constitutions. We can, like it was proposed, use the referendum to decide which system can we take now. Can we go parliamentary? Can we go presidential? And if we go presidential, what are the what are the advantages? And if we go parliamentary, what are the advantages? We are looking today at the issues of African integration. This was part of the discussion that we carried on from last week, and we are looking at how Africa can be integrated. Last time we were looking at the South Africa, we are looking at what is the East Africa, the East African community. We are looking at the areas of ECOWAS, areas of these other countries. But we also need to look at the North Africa. This part, the countries in the part of North Africa, most of them seem to have their own systems, like we could say outside of Africa. But also, when you look at the northern part of Africa, they are disadvantaged in terms of a harsh environment, but also maybe they have progressed further and better than what the rest of the African countries that are endowed, like Ndugu Rugarama was saying, with the green cover and other sources. Where is the problem? And is it possible that we can come together as one Africa, North Africa, South Africa, East Africa, and West Africa, like Comrade Gaddafi had suggested? Do we have any advantages in doing that? Do we have any problems in doing that? What do we look at as bringing us together as of Africa? And what do we look at as an advantage that has helped the people of North Africa to advance more, actually, than the rest of the countries of Africa? Tagala, I will take you on that.
I think one of the things that advantages, of course, Africa is extremely diverse.
People, and this has several implications. The implications can be both positive, they can be negative. In other words, this growth in population.
Arabs. We also know that their territories tend to be vast, except for cases such as the Sahrawi or what do they call it, Western Sahara or something like that. There's a very little country.
Republic.
Yes, there's a very small country there. And Tunisia, the rest are sizable. Whether you're talking about Libya, you're talking about Mauritania, Morocco, Algeria, even Egypt. Egypt tends to vary from the others, maybe because Their colonial masters were not the same. But still, their territories are fairly expansive. That aside, I think also their proximity to Europe has also had an effect on the way they see themselves and the way they do what they do. Definitely, they have had a lot of contact with the white man for a very much longer time than we have on account of that. They have also been very different from the rest of us, heavily intermarried, but still, for them, their economic resources are primarily two, in as far as I know, mostly oil, and then there's gas. The people of Northern Africa, especially Algeria, have also had a history of very vigorous resistance of the colonial master. I think it was most pronounced in Algeria than in any other place. These people, I think, it allowed them to forge a certain way forward that we have not been able to do. You see, I think because Algeria paid such a high price, I'm focusing on Algeria because it anchors the Maghreb Union. Algeria's conflict, very long and bitter, against France, I think shaped the capacity within them to actually do what they need to do to move to where they need to go. Unlike many of the sub-Saharan nations, the populations of those countries are small compared to their resource base, compared to their land masses. So what I'm trying to say is that their way forward, their developmental model, if you will, has been markedly different from what we see in the southern part. However, it is not necessarily one that has delivered exceedingly different results from what we have in the rest of the continent. It has still boiled down to the capacity of the individual nation as opposed to the whole of Northern Africa. Their development levels are different. For example, if you see what's happening in Algeria developmentally, by the way, Algeria has the highest human development index on the continent.
Sure.
And compared to what is happening in Mauritania, where they still even practice slavery, by the way. So they are every bit as diverse within Northern Africa as we are diverse in this southern part of the continent. So for them, what unites them mostly is really the fact that they were ruled by the French, but not much else.
So thank you so much, viewer, for being with us up to this moment. We are still continuing the programs, but we are going to have an interruption shortly because we are going live to the Ministry of Finance, where we are commemorating the day for the 8 billion, we have hit the 8 billion population mark, and that function is coming to you live from the Ministry of Finance now, and I hope that we shall have more time to discuss the issues of the northern part of Africa. And within me in studio has been sister of mine, Rachel Tagali, Ndug Rugarama, and Ndug Otuko. For now, of Finance to continue with that live event, but we shall be back with you next week on Friday as we look at more issues that affect us as African people and the African continent. Don't go away, stay with UBC, more programs are coming your way. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. The day of 8 billion presents a vital opportunity to draw the world's attention to the infinite possibilities of humanity to build the world we want, especially with sexual and reproductive health and rights at its core. The idea is really to move from numbers and take us to, the rights, and we don't want to concentrate on the 8 billion, but we want to talk about the quality of life of these 8 billion. So that is why the theme